Hey everybody, it is Gabby and I am here to tell you the top 8 books that have made me cry. Some were ugly cries, some were these beautiful tears just because it was so beautifully written and had such a beautiful message to it, and others were just simply causing me to cry. Now today is Friday and it is definitely my comfy Friday day, which is why there is a change of location. I'm upstairs right now, but I wanted to get this video up so that I could edit it tonight and have it up for you guys tomorrow, which would be Saturday. So without further ado, we're gonna jump straight into the 8 books that made me cry.
She cannot cope and it hurts inside her mind, couldn't let it go.
So we're gonna start off with the ones that simply just made me cry. And I'll kind of talk about why. I don't want to spoil it for those of you that haven't read it, so I will say what the book is first, and then if you have not read it, definitely forward through it a little bit. I will try to put a picture up somewhere just because I don't have these books anymore. I do have, I think, 2 of them, but they're downstairs and I just don't feel like going down there right now. The first book was Suzanne's Diary for Nicholas, written by James Patterson. This book was probably one of the first books that ever made me cry. I read it when I was younger and I just remember reading throughout it and thinking something's going to happen to either the baby that the diary entries were for, or to the husband, or to Suzanne, because it just had so much foreshadowing throughout it. But what you don't expect is for the diary to never make it to Nicholas. And the whole concept is that Suzanne and Nicholas both die in the car accident caused by Suzanne's seizures, and that just, I don't want to say it broke me because it wasn't an ugly cry, but it's just the fact that the mom was writing all these entries for her son that was never going to see it, and the dad then has to write that final entry. And I think the final entry is what made me cry the most because he now had to finish the diary. So I mean, it's been some time since I read it, so I don't truly remember all of the reasons why I cried, but that was definitely one of the big reasons. The next one is My Sister's Keeper by Jodi Picoult, and this one kind of hit a nerve because at the time one of my friend's sisters was going through cancer treatments, and just seeing how the family was dealing with everything just struck a chord. I remember reading it, and you know, it definitely wasn't the same circumstances, because had one of her sisters been able to donate different parts, than like different organs, they definitely would have, but that wasn't necessarily a option. And I think that the end of My Sister's Keeper, the book adaptation of it, was heartbreaking because in the end the sister is saved. She's saved ultimately by the one by the sister who wanted to have a choice of if she was going to donate. And I think it was just, it was powerful because she still ended up saving her sister, and I don't think she ever wanted to not save her sister, but she wanted to have that choice. That was number 2. I feel like this is already off to a really bad start because I don't remember some of these books, but there are ones that made me ugly cry that I remember to a T. The next one that just simply caused me to cry was Ruin by Rachel Van Dyken, and I just remember it made me cry because one of the characters ends up having cancer, and it was right around the time that my Nana was diagnosed with cancer, and I remember thinking, this is some bullshit, because for me, books are supposed to be an escape, and I feel like I went into Ruin thinking that it was going to be a love story that was safe from any type of disease or illness, and it definitely wasn't. And I mean, it had a happy ending, which in my mind made me cry, but in a good way. I'll get to kind of the ending that I'll get to my Nana in a moment. The next book is part of the it had me cry because it was just so beautifully written, and that was Unlit Star by Unlit Star. I've talked about this book on my channel before. The pages are just filled with such solid advice, and it's not even put into a lifestyle book or a self-help book. It's put into a story about this girl who is a housekeeper for the popular boy's family, because the popular boy can't use his legs the way he used to, and she has set on this mission to, I guess, raise or to make money. But what you don't know until the end is that she is actually sick, and that's why she wanted him to appreciate what he still had, because she knew her time was running out. And the worst part is that they fall in love, and you know, her heart was broken, and then his heart's broken, and then, I mean, the ending happens, and you're just, yeah. I mean, this one was very close to being at the ugly cry, but the only reason it wasn't was because throughout the whole book I was either laughing or just these happy tears were there, because I kept thinking that this book was just so beautiful. The advice that came, like, I don't want to say advice, but some of the choice of phrases spoke volumes to me, and I think I even posted on my Goodreads some of the quotes of it, and just thinking about what was said and trying to focus on the positive aspects of your life. The last 4 books are books that made me ugly cry to the point where I was so glad that I was reading them by myself, because otherwise I would have had to say I don't even know. I don't like crying in front of people, and if I've ever cried in front of somebody, it means that I really trust them. So I am one of those people who like to cry in peace. The first book was Me Before You by Jojo Moyes, and I don't want to say that the entire book made me ugly cry. It was more so the ending and this whole idea that there are certain circumstances where being alive is not the best choice, and understanding that people that are in a situation where they don't have any control over what they do, that they don't want to live. And it does turn into this whole idea of, well, you can still enjoy life, or what life has to offer you, but at the same time, if you spent your entire life doing all of these adventurous things, and then one day you're in a wheelchair and can't move from the waist down, is that really a life that you would want to live? And I think that was the big underlying idea throughout Me Before You, is that it was his whole life changed, and it wasn't necessarily a bad thing that he survived, but in his mind it wasn't a good thing either, because now he can't do anything that he truly enjoyed. Now obviously the main character, I'm drawing a blank on her name, but she definitely tried to show him the beauty of what life still had to offer, and she did see life in a new way, and it did bring him some joy, but at the end he still wasn't happy. And I think that's what killed me, because, you know, there are people in this world who are fighting different things, and if it's their choice, that's their choice, you know? I hope that made sense. The next book that made me ugly cry was A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness, and this was right around the time, I don't want to say like right around the time that my Nana was getting really bad, but it was basically A Monster Calls follows a boy whose mother is going through cancer treatments, and it's getting worse and worse, and nobody is telling him the truth. And I think that's the biggest thing, is that when you have a family member who is sick, it's not that they don't want to tell you everything. They don't want you to lose hope, even though they have. And I think that's why this book really made me ugly cry, and is about to make me ugly cry again. The boy was dealing with so many different emotions, and his grandmother wasn't telling him the truth. And I think I remembered thinking that I was kind of in the dark about my Nana a lot. And my Nana passed away a little over a year ago. So, I mean, I wasn't a kid, and I understood what was going on, but I still didn't know everything until closer to when certain things were happening. I mean, we all thought that. So just as a background, so my Nana had pancreatic cancer. She was diagnosed, and the tumor was up against a blood vessel, and because of that they couldn't operate to remove it with the Whipple procedure, because it was so close that if they did something wrong, the blood vessel would have ruptured, and then that would have been that. And the big part of why they couldn't go in to perform the Whipple was because once they perform it, if they try it and they can't get the tumor, then that's it. She was not diagnosed with terminal cancer, but there were so many different things that happened throughout the treatments that caused it to turn into they couldn't treat it. And I think in a monster, I feel like I'm getting like sidetracked, but in A Monster Calls, you see the mother getting better. And I think that it was more so for the son's sake. And the moment that he moves in with his grandma is when you know that that's the reason why he's moving in, is so that the transition is a little bit easier when the mom does pass away. And I remember when the mom did pass away, I was ugly crying, because I just kept thinking that that was going to happen with my Nana at some point. So that is why that book made me ugly cry, and I'm sorry that I teared up now just thinking about it. I mean, the book itself, there was such a big connection between the boy and the monster, and what the monster truly represented. In my mind, the monster represented all of his emotions that he was dealing with, and it was his way of handling a situation that he didn't quite understand at his age, and that was his way of coping. The monster wasn't necessarily a real monster, and I think it was him just trying to figure everything out. The ending was heartbreaking, but it's reality, you know? So many books that I've read, the person that gets cancer is magically cured, and that's just not always the case. Obviously there are cases where people are cured and they go through remission and then they are survivors. That happens. But typically in books they do like, oh, this person has brain tumor, nope, you're gonna survive. And I did like the fact that A Monster Calls hit that part, and you truly understood that that was reality, and the monster was somebody's way of coping with a terrible situation. The next one that made me ugly cry was Alice Bliss by Laura Harrington. This one made me ugly cry. I've never had anybody go off to war, so it wasn't that connection. It went along with my Nana. I'm not going to get back into that because I feel like I'll start crying again. But anyways, I've talked about this on my channel before, the book Alice Bliss. I posted a review on it. If you haven't watched it yet, I'll put the link down below. So I'm not going to go too much into detail, but I remember reading the last 50 pages and I just literally just had tears running down my face, and I had to stop at one point because I had so much, like I had so many tears that I couldn't even read the book anymore. So I paused, went downstairs, and it was just awful. I had to get some water, clear my mind, and then I like powered through the rest of it, and I was crying the whole entire time. I closed the book and I was still crying. It was just one of those books that started off really slow and then out of nowhere hit you like a freaking truck. It's as simple as that. The last book that made me ugly cry was The Art of Racing in the Rain by Garth Stein. There's a big reason why, because clearly I like torturing myself. The Art of Racing in the Rain follows a story told from the dog's perspective, point of view. And it starts off with a dog who is in his bed and he has arthritis, his hips are weak, and he has cataracts and all this other stuff, and he's waiting for his owner to get home. When the owner does get home, he like says in the dog's name is Enzo, so Enzo's saying that he's going to trick Denny into thinking that, you know, he can't get up, just to kind of play with him. And But then when he does actually try to get up, he realizes, oh shoot, I can't get up. Starts off automatically with you knowing that the dog's gonna die. Like, it's just that simple, because Denny mentioned something about taking Enzo to the vet and it's not going to be a two-way trip. And we all know what that means in vet talk. If two-way trip means that the dog's gonna come home. A one-way trip, the dog's not going to come home. So it starts off basically at the end, and then it flashes all the way to the start of when Denny got Enzo. And it bounces back and forth between the past and the present. And I think that's why this book was so amazing. So my friend Christine recommended this book to me, and at the time I didn't tell her what was going on with my own dog. And so my dog Macy had cataracts. She had arthritis. Her hips were popping out. Her knees were popping out of her sockets. She was falling all the time. She couldn't really get up on her own. And then we found out that she had edema later on, and that her cataract wasn't actually a cataract, I guess. The vets had told us that it was cataracts, and then the only thing that could really work was just eye drops, and we tried the eye drops and that didn't work. And then the vet that we took her to, the same vet's office but a different vet, because the vet's office that I was taking my dog to had a rotation of vets, which was a whole nother story, but told us that the eyes should have been treated and that the only way of relieving her pressure was to remove her eyes. And considering everything else that she was going through, like, that just wasn't going to be an option. So anyways, I hadn't told Christine about this, so I don't think she would have really recommended this book had she known. I remember reading it, and because it's told from Enzo's point of view, it does put a lot of things into perspective, because, I mean, obviously we don't know what a dog is thinking even from this book, but basically Enzo had it in his mind that he was saying, like, you know, it's okay to let go. Oh, and by the way, in this book, you know, one of the characters has cancer, because everybody gets cancer now. Lovely, right? Okay, between the cancer little snippet and the dog snippet, it was just so much going on that related to what I was going through. Just tore me apart. And I remember after reading it, I had to hold my dog, and I was just like, I don't want you to be in pain anymore. And that's like the big thing in The Art of Racing in the Rain, is that the dog didn't want to be in pain and the owner didn't want his dog to be in pain, and Enzo was putting up a front and like jumping around trying to make Denny feel better. And I feel like that's probably what my dog Macy had been doing, just kind of every so often she would just have this burst of life because she would see that we were kind of upset, and I think that that's what she was doing. The ending, like the last 2 pages of The Art of Racing in the Rain, definitely killed me, because throughout the book there's like a few lines that Enzo and Denny kind of have that are like the same. He always said throughout the book that he would come back as a human and find Denny and tell him this one specific line, and then at the very end Denny's in Italy, and it's obviously 10 years later because his daughter's grown up, and she says, I want you to meet these 2 people, and Denny says, well, not right now. She's like, no, I think you should meet them. It turns out that it's this older man and his son's name is Enzo, and he says the line that Denny always said, and it's just like, oh my god, that's Enzo. Or I think his name is Lorenzo. I don't know, one or the other, whatever. So those were the books that made me cry. Some were ugly cries, some were beautiful crying, some were just simply crying. So I ask you now, what are the books that have made you cry? And if no books have made you cry, is it because you just don't cry, or you just don't allow it to get to that point? Because I know there have been books that had started making me cry, and then I was just like, no, I'm about to cry, I'm going to close the book for a few minutes, and then I would go to it like the next day, and then I would have already kind of forgotten a little bit about it, so I didn't cry as much. So yeah, what books made you cry? And that's about it. So go ahead and comment that down below. And I'm sorry I broke down a little bit on camera. That was awful, but I guess it goes along with tearjerkers and why it made me cry. Yeah, until tomorrow when I post my next video. Bye!